So I cannot wait for you to experience it with us. It's an amazing journey.
Most of the history books, they write that Temple Mount was empty at that time. We can establish now, based on the evidence that we have, that there was much and intensive activity upon the Temple Mount between the 4th and 7th centuries of the Common Era, the so-called Byzantine period. We have pottery, we have abundance of coins, we have cruciform pendants, we have building remains, we have mosaic floors, etc. We may even say that there was some ecclesiastic activity. We have fragments of chancel screens of church buildings. So we can say for sure that the Temple Mount was not empty. It is true that the Jewish traditions upon the Temple Mount were adopted by Christianity and transformed towards the Holy Sepulchre. It is true that itineraries of pilgrims, Christian pilgrims, during the early Christian period did not include the Temple Mount, but the evidence is very clearly pointing towards the Temple Mount being occupied and even by ecclesiastic structures.
So it's pretty fascinating that the history of the Temple Mount reaches back all those thousands of years ago, and today just still remains a very big area of political controversy. And certainly there's, I guess, this sense of discovery that's sitting there that can't be accessed.
Yes, actually every day in the Sifting Project we have finds which illuminate dark corners in the history of Jerusalem. It's a fascinating work.
Yeah. Now, today also you're going to be taking us on a tour of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. What can you tell us about that?
The Holy Sepulchre is in the heart of the Christian quarter of the old city of Jerusalem. The present-day building, most of it is medieval, dating back to the 12th century and on. The first building at that spot was built by Emperor Constantine in the 4th century of the Common Era. That building is an ugly building, not very much inspiring. In comparison to churches in Europe or in other parts of the Western world, and not even in the Western world, in comparison to any other church, it is gloomy, it is unattractive, it is ugly.
Why do you think that was?
On the other hand,
yeah,
it is one of the most fascinating buildings on earth. It is a complex of buildings where every corner is a page in a history book. Every corner tells a story. Every wall of the building, every dome in the building, every altar in the building, every staircase leading down to a cellar in that building is a fascinating historical tale. So there are no buildings of that kind all around the world.
So it seems like there's this paradox here of the fascination in aesthetically something that's not very attractive. Do you think there is an intention behind this that was a part of what they were thinking?
It so happened. Because of historical developments. The building, unlike all other Christian edifices in the world, is not property of one denomination. There is a certain division of space and division of time for ceremonies, religious ceremonies, between different denominations. The Greek Orthodox were the first, they own most of the building. But there are Catholics, there are Armenians, there are Ethiopians, there are Syrian Orthodox, there are the Coptic Church of Egypt. So there is division of ownership in the building. Many of these different denominations, they had tensions and misunderstandings through the history. It was the Holy Sepulchre that caused the Crimean War in the 19th century because of removal of some candle stands from one place to the other by one of the denominations. In any case, the Turkish authorities, they wrote down a certain status quo which was prevailing there in the 19th century, and that was accepted as law by the Turks. That law was adopted later on by the British from 1917 and on. It was accepted as law by the Jordanian authorities ruling the old city of Jerusalem from 1948 to 1967. It is accepted also by the Israeli authorities as law. So this is the only church in which by law there has to be a policeman. Yeah? So it is very exceptional in many ways. More than that, the church got neglected with time because of the division of ownership. Nobody was responsible for the whole structure. More than that, I would say, the Western world, which is mainly Protestant, the Protestants came too late. And all that was already divided between the others.
Yeah.
And more than that, they came here and saw the different clergy members fighting one another inside the place. And it looked to them gloomy, far from the dreams they had about a nice garden with the tomb of Christ. So they came up with other alternatives. They came up in the 1880s and 1890s with the garden tomb, which was especially made popular by General Charles George Gordon, who was a legend in his lifetime, and his tragic death in Khartoum in Sudan, where he was shortened by one head, made the place even more popular amongst Westerners. So we have competing sites. We have the Garden Tomb in northern Jerusalem. We have the Holy Sepulchre in the heart of the old city. And all that created all kinds of tensions around the subject. And all that also avoided the restoration and the proper upkeeping of the building.
How far apart are the conflicting places, the Garden Tomb versus the Sepulchre?
Half an hour walk.
And is there any expert opinion on which location, or if either location is accurate?
Look, I'm a Jerusalemite for the last 68 years. I was not around when the funeral took place.
Yeah.
I only established my understanding of the subject through the historical sources. We have a very important source of the first century who was born in Jerusalem and left us some writings. That is Flavius Josephus, or Joseph, the son of Mattathias the priest. He was a priest born in Jerusalem who later became a general in the first revolt against the Romans, and still later became a historian in the court of the Julio-Flavian dynasty in Rome. He describes Jerusalem of his time, which is several decades after crucifixion. He speaks about 3 different walls that existed in Jerusalem. One of those walls was built by King Herod Agrippa, the grandson of Herod the Great, about a decade after crucifixion, so that is out of question. So the so-called second wall was the outer wall of the city in the time of crucifixion.
So now we have, as you mentioned, 2 spots, the Garden Tomb and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, as 2 areas of contention as to where the tomb of Christ is. What do experts think?
Now, Jesus had to be buried outside the city because no Jews were buried inside the city. According to Jewish halacha or religious law, tombs contain impurity, and it has to be at least 50 cubits from the last building of the city, outside the city. And the question is, what was the outer limit of the city in the time of Jesus? Where is the second wall? That matter is very much debated by scholars because, first of all, the potential line of the second wall is in an area which is densely populated and densely built up today and cannot be excavated. The second problem is that in the descriptions of Flavius Josephus, the second wall gets only 1 sentence, too short a description, and therefore the subject is debated. Not only that, there is it's a bombshell, because wherever you put the wall, it either justifies this or that view, and behind each of the views there are either very strong and very opinionated Catholic scholars, and when behind the other one there are very strong and very opinionated Protestant scholars.
Right.
I'm in a very good position. I couldn't care less about any of them. So I'm rather objective in this. I think that Christians shouldn't care also about the exact location, because he is anyhow not there.
Right.
He has risen. As an archaeologist, I can say for sure that the traditional location in the Holy Sepulchre is a very good one. First of all, it is most probably just outside the second wall, though today it is in the middle of town. It was outside the wall in the time of Jesus. Second, in the complex of the tomb, of the building of the Holy Sepulchre, there is one rock-hewn cave, which is a burial cave dating back to the Second Temple period, 1st century BC or 1st century AD. And that helps very much the potential identification. Point number 3 is very important. That is a place about which we have a tradition from the 4th century and on, which is a little bit more than a fortnight.
That's it for this particular interview. Thanks for joining me. Really excited to take this ongoing journey with you as we keep bringing more content. If you haven't already, you really should subscribe to this channel. There's a lot of phenomenal content coming down the road into the future that you'll want to know about. Leave a comment down here. I think people would love to hear from you, and then you can hear from them too. If you liked it, go ahead and give a like. It only takes half a second, and share this with people that you care about. The world needs more light in it right now. So thanks for being with me. Hope to connect with you again soon.